Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. We're here to talk about Project 2 today. And Project 2 requires you to design a interactive form in InDesign. And I want to update everybody where we are in the process. This is all a scenario-based course. You are a graphic designer hired by a company, a graphic design firm. One of this firm's clients is a magazine company or a company that needs to have a magazine design. And up to this point, they were all, the magazine was print based. So you came up with a brilliant idea as a new employee to get your boss's attention or to show your boss what you could do. Make a proposal to convert this print-based magazine to an interactive one. So the first project, you came up with a prototype design. Your supervisor liked the idea. So the next step is moving on to project 2. So the client saw your design. They liked the design. They liked the idea. And they figured since you had enough InDesign skills in the areas of interactive design that they wanted to add another piece to the puzzle. So they want a interactive form to be added to the magazine, and that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to show you how to create the form. I'm not going to create an entire form, but I'm going to give you everything that you need to get it done. So let's look at the assignment for a second. Here's a sample of what I created. Your form doesn't have to look exactly like this. Doesn't have to look anything close to this. One of the goals of the assignment is to make your form fit the theme of your magazine. So you're going to incorporate some colors. You maybe incorporate an image, maybe even font styles to make it look like it's a part of the magazine and it was already there and it should have been there from the start. Okay, so very simple form. It could be a little bit more complex, but this is the form that we have or that we're going to use. So there are a number of different form fields: first name, last name, street address, city, state, zip code, email address, and then a 3-part radio button where the person that's filling out the form gets to select one of these, and so that's why it's a radio button system. So that's pretty much it. And there's a clear button. When you press the clear button, it erases any content that has been added to the form and sets it back at its default value. And the submit button emails the contents of the form to whoever's email you specify. So in our case, this would be, well, theoretically it would be the company's email, and it would go to whoever's monitoring that email. In this case, you're going to put your email in and send it to you to test it to make sure it works. So let me talk a little bit about the fields. Some fields are required, and in most forms, some fields are required. So we try to mimic real life here. So first name, last name, you got to put that in, or we're not going to be able to use the data. And then email address. So the other fields aren't required, which means somebody fills it out. They don't have to fill out those fields. They can leave them blank. And the submit button will still work. The information will still get sent. There are a couple form elements that are scrollable, and this means that you can type more than than what's available that you see in the text box. So you can go beyond the length, or well, basically the width of the text box in 3 different situations. In the other ones, you're going to be constrained to whatever the width is provided there in the form. The only other interesting thing or thing of note is that the submit button, to make the submit button work, when we go in to fill out that part of the information, we're going to use a mail to command. Some of you may be familiar with this from other courses. Mail to, and then you're going to put your address. So just the word mail to, one word, colon, your email address. Ignore all of this. You're going to put your email address here, and that's going to send it when you hit the submit button to where it needs to go. Now, in some cases, you can have a submit button in forms. Go to databases and go to other locations and get compiled differently. But this is how we have this one set up here. So we already talked about the clear button. So step 3 in this process is to add some visual flair. So you're just not going to do a normal form. You're gonna make it look nice. So I tried to make this look nice within the time parameters that I had. So you want to sort of add some color to it. I've added a box behind it with a drop shadow, and then I brought part of the cover in and cropped some of it out, and made it a little bit transparent and put it behind all of the form elements. So the next step is, of course, you want to make sure it works properly. Once you figure out that it works properly, if you have everything done, then you want to submit it. So I need the PDF, and I need the original InDesign file. So what's going to happen here is the original proposal was for 10 pages. This is going to increase the magazine page number to 11 because you're going to add a page. So I want the form to be on its own separate page. When you submit the form, you don't have to include the entire 11 pages. All you have to do is, when you export it, just export that one page. And that's very easily to do. That way I don't have to scroll through the entire document to get to the form. So if that doesn't make sense, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know as well. So I think that's it with the assignment. So let's go into InDesign. And here's my sample project I'm still working on. Here's my page 2. You guys have seen that. Let's scroll down to what you're going to do. So you're going to scroll down. I already have the form, but let's act like I don't have the form. We're going to scroll down. We're going to use a couple panels to help us get things done. We're going to use the buttons and forms panel, the sample buttons and forms panel, pages panel, and the toolbar. So I've moved them closer to the page. Hopefully you guys can see this on YouTube, and if not, I think you should be able to enlarge the screen some, and hopefully the resolution is pretty good. Let me know about the quality and how you like this, and I can do more of these in the future. So there are a couple ways that you can get to the bottom of the page and insert a page. I'm going to do it through the pages panel. This is the pages panel, of course, over here to your right. I'm just going to scroll down here until I get to the last page, and I'm just going to click on the thumbnail that represents the last page, and we're going to click right here, this icon with a folded edge on the left side of the bottom of a page. That's a create new page icon. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to add a page. So you see it added another blank. We added a blank page here, page 11. So I'm going to double click on that, and it's going to take me to page 11 in InDesign, in the InDesign document. And you can tell if you look down the bottom here, you can see how automatic page numbers are set at 11. So, okay. So there are a couple things that we need to do. First of all, we need to sort of design a grid for the form. And this isn't any functional part, but we need to have it visually. Let me go to view and look at one thing real quick. Okay, we got the rulers. And let's go to view, change grid mode to normal. That's what I was trying to do so I can see margins and things like that. I'm just going to bring a ruler guide on the page to help guide the design, make sure everything is the same size. I'm not going to create an entire form, but I'm going to give you enough to get everything done. So first off, what we're going to do is you need to create boxes where, or areas where there's going to be text fields or text boxes where the user can type in information. But before we do that, we have to sort of graphically create a structure where then you could place the text inside of. And there are a couple ways to do this, but InDesign likes it this way. So if you do it another way, you may have some problems. So I just use the rectangle frame tool to create a rectangle. And then I'm going to color the stroke around it black. And I'm going to fill it with a paper. Not that we have to do that, but I'm going to just fill it with a paper. If you're going to create a background behind it, you definitely want to fill it so that you can see the difference between the background and the fill color. So how many forms are we going to do? We'll just do one. All the forms are pretty much exactly the same. They're all text fields. So now that we have the box and we can go back to view, screen mode, preview, you can see it's just a box. So now I want to add a text frame. I'm going to add the text frame inside of the rectangle. So this is basically the active part of the page where someone is going to be able to type. So we have that. That's great. So what you're going to do is you're going to select the text part of it, not the shape, not the rectangle. You're going to select the text. Of course, you're an advanced student, so you know the difference between clicking on a shape and clicking on a text frame. Once we have the text frame selected, then we're going to go to buttons and forms. Now, if you have a earlier version of InDesign and it's CS5 or earlier, you're not going to have a buttons and forms panel. You may just have a buttons panel, as I was alerted to earlier today. So unfortunately, you're not going to be able to add all of the interactivity to this form. But if this is the case, email me as soon as possible and we'll talk about alternatives to supplement this assignment and a different approach that you can take, granted that you have an earlier version of InDesign. So with this text frame activated, we're going to click in the down arrow in the type area here in the buttons and forms panel, and we're going to click text field. And that's all we have. Well, that's all we have to do, except for all these text fields, you want to give them a name. So just so you can make sense of everything. And this is going to be, let's call this first. We're going to call this first name, and we're going to put the first name in this text box. We don't need any actions, so we're not going to add any actions or anything like that. The other thing that you should be concerned with is down the bottom here, the checkbox printable. What that means is that you can actually print this form and you can select elements on the page or in the form that you don't want to print, just in case someone wants to print the form out. And so in some cases, what that might mean is You may not want your submit button to print. You just might want the form to print without the submit button. So you can make the submit button non-printable, which means when they print the page, that element won't print out on the page as a part of the page. Because if you print a form out and it has a submit button on the paper form, I mean, you can't really click on the paper and make the submit button work. So, okay, so that's why you wouldn't use that. There are a number of fields we talked about that are required. So when you have the text frame selected and you make it a button, or you make it a form element, then you can also click here. That's going to make it required. In this case, first name is required. So let's do that. And I believe this one is scrollable also. Now, if you make a larger text frame and you want the person that's completing your form to type in more than one line, hit enter and go down. You can make this a multi-line. If you don't want the user to add something to the form, but you want to add something to the form, you can make a field and call it read only. They won't be able to type anything. You'll type it when you get it on your end. And if you want to require a password, you can do that as well. We're not doing that in this project. Font size is the size of the text that will display inside of the typing area in the form. So let's keep that at 12, but you may want to play around with that. We don't have to save anything. We just come out, just click out. All the changes will be made. You can go back and double click to make sure that that's correct. So the next thing we want to do is let's add a submit button. And you need to make sure you do this in a certain way, or it's not the form isn't gonna work properly. I like to save time sometimes, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just selecting the rectangle and I'm gonna do copy, do paste, and that pastes it. There are other ways you can do it too. I'm not gonna get real fancy with this or modify it that much. But once again, we have a shape, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to type some text, and we want the word submit to be in this button. So we're going to make this button. I'm going to modify the font a little bit using the control panel. Just positioning this inside of the box here, and we are going to center it. And of course it is centered, but it is aligned in the top of the text frame where the blue area is. So what I'm going to do is click over top of the text frame, right click on it, go down to text frame options. From text frame options, I can select center align. That's going to align it in the middle of the text frame, which is in the middle of the shape. So then what we're going to do is highlight both, and we are going to right click and group. So we made a group. Okay, when you make these buttons, you don't want to make the buttons from a text frame. You want to make them from a shape or a group shape that has some text grouped in with it. But you don't want to use a text frame. I have found that does not work very well. So I'm trying to give you some of the tips and tricks that I've encountered in working with this assignment. So to make the submit button, you're going to click on the grouped object there that includes the text frame and the rectangle. You can go back to type in the buttons and forms panel, and we are going to select button. This button has an action, so when we click on it, we want it to do something. The rest of them we're just going to type into. So Let's go to the name field, call it submit. And then we want to start out action. So we want to add an action. So we click here. And we want to come down to submit form. So we're going to click submit form. And then the URL that I talked about here, you're going to type in mail to colon without any space. And then you're going to type in your email address. So I'm going to type in my email address. Email me at this address. This is my personal email address. So let's do another thing. Let's add a rollover state. Right now we just have a normal state. We're going to add a rollover state. And what that's going to do, of course the button is still selected, is it's going to change something when we roll our mouse over top of the button. So I want to change the color. So I'm going to go up and click on, let's just select the green. How about that? All right, good. So, and let's change the color of the text as well. So even though this is grouped, there's still two different elements, and you can still modify the two different elements. You notice when we colored the box green, the text stayed black. So they're still separate objects, but they're grouped together, and you can modify them separately, which is really, really cool. So we are still on the rollover state. So if we click here, that's the normal state. There's the rollover state. And then we can add a click state too. Let's do that. I'm gonna make that just red for some, I don't know. So let's just go with that. So we're gonna save. I'm just gonna save it. Let's just save on top of what I was already doing. And so we have submit. We have the form. Let's give this form a name. I'm just gonna call it first name. So we'll make it a little bit bigger, highlight it. I don't know, let's try, it's a little bit too big. So let's do 18. Make it bold. Move it down a little bit. And that's fine. Yours is gonna look much better than this. Trust me. Well, you need it to be. So what else can we add? One more thing I want to show you. From the sample buttons and forms, there are sample buttons here that you can use. There are some you can use for navigation if you scroll all the way down, and that's what I use down here for the navigation. You can just click, hold, and drag one of these buttons onto your page. They're already set up. This is a go to next page button. It's already set up. You can actually resize it if you want, or make it smaller, or change color, or anything else. But so there are a number of different buttons here already that you can use, and so you don't have to create them on your own, which is great. So for the radio buttons, I use this sample buttons and forms. I think it's number 20. Just click, hold, and drag it onto your page. And then what you're going to do is add the labels to it. So if you don't like the size, you want to change the size, you can actually resize this. Just select all three, and then you can resize them. So we need some labels, so I'm just going to copy and paste what we already have. I'll bring a ruler guide in, and we'll make sure that they're all aligned properly. If you notice, as I'm moving the text in place, you see there are a number of green lines that show up that's let me know that it's centered in between the text and the boxes, the radio boxes. So this saves me a little time, and there are more quicker ways that you can do this too. Let's just say your form won't do this, but it's asking someone to specify if they're beginner, intermediate, or advanced. So these are already set up other than typing a name in. The only nuance here is all three of these buttons are related because they're all sort of part of one radio button, and so that's why the name is exactly the same. You don't have to use the buttons from the samples and buttons. You can make your own, but what you're going to have to do is create 3 separate boxes just like they did, and then make sure you use the same name, but you're going to select all 3 of them, then go set up your button, and that way it's going to give all 3 of them the same setting, and it's going to recognize it as being a part of a radio button. So, but it's easier just to pull in buttons. So now we have created the form. So we're going to save, then export. Make sure you export as Adobe PDF Interactive. Click export, and we have it set to open up once it's finished. So let's try to click submit. We see the rollover effects work. Get the message, at least one required field was empty. So let's fill out that, and then let's select intermediate, hit submit, and then what you'll see here, if it works, is the send mail box, and I've set up my default mail, and when you hit continue, this is the email you're going to receive. So it's going to make a copy, actually a PDF. It's going to make a copy of the PDF and send it through email. And then you'll open up the PDF and you'll see the information that was added to it. So it's not as fancy as all of your responses getting added to a database or to a spreadsheet. In this case, it just goes into this PDF, at least the way we have it using the Mail 2. So that's pretty much it. The only difference is you're going to make your form look a lot better than this. And you're going to add all of the required fields. You're going to make sure that you go in and make ones required that are required, the ones that are scrollable. And you're going to make everything else work. Let me know if you have any questions about this. I think this is everything that you need. Maybe I missed something, but if I did, let me know. Send me an email, and I'll get right on it, and we'll try to get those answers to you as soon as possible. This is a little tricky. You have to make sure that when you set this up, you are using the text field. You're not using the shape of the triangle. Also, you don't want to shortcut this thing and create a triangle and add text into it so that it's one element. It's a text frame basically that has a rule around it. You don't want to do that either. I haven't seen that work very well. You may get some form errors in it. So it likes it to be set up this way. If you find another way to do it, fine, that's great. If it works, it works. And we'll be all happy. We'll be very happy about that. So anyway, let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if it was. And Take care. I'll see you in Leo.